You can call me Mystic Mike because I predict these things.
Bernardo Sopaj takes on Ricky Turcios on the prelims of the UFC 311 card this Saturday. This is a rescheduled bout. It was originally supposed to take place on November 9th, I think it was. So a couple months ago, it got rescheduled to this card. Bernardo Sopaj, young up-and-comer. Decent amount of hype on this kid coming out of All Stars in Sweden. So, the same gym as Khamzat Chimaev. Had a very good performance in his last fight, although he did lose by highlight reel, flying knee KO. Had a very good showing of himself against Vinicius Oliveira, who's just an absolute stud. 21-3 right now. Another young guy, 29 years old. But Sopaj, 24 years old, 5'6", 66-inch reach. Been fighting professionally since 2016, which is just crazy. He's been fighting since he was like 16 years old, fighting grown men. Taking on Ricky Turcios, who we know so well from the Ultimate Fighter series, originally on Dana White's Contender Series when he lost to Boston Salmon. Then got his shot on the Ultimate Fighter. Kind of a 50-50 fighter in the UFC. Beat Brady Hiestand, which, I think Brady Hiestand's pretty good. Loses to Ayman Zahabi. No shame in that. Beats Kevin Natividad. And then loses to Raul Rosas Jr. So I hope this fight actually happens this time, because I feel like I've researched this fight way too much already. I think this is the lock of the card. I just think Bernardo Sopaj is just levels above Ricky Turcios. We saw in his fight that he took against Vinicius Oliveira, which again, he took on short notice. Vinicius Oliveira was supposed to be fighting Yanis Gamori, who pulled out. So Sopaj stepped in on short notice in that fight and had a really good showing of himself. Got a lot of good takedowns, was hanging in there in the striking department. Ended up just kind of gassing. You could just tell he wasn't prepping for the fight, didn't have the gas tank to keep the pace that he was pushing. But I feel like if he did have a full training camp, that fight could have been a lot different. And that's saying something against somebody like Vinicius Oliveira, who I feel like has a very bright future in the UFC. Ricky Turcios, just kind of spazzy. I mean, they keep saying he's chaotic, and I just feel like that's a fancy term for somebody that's just not very good, not very technical, pushes a high pace, kind of crazy. But in terms of actual skill and being technical, I feel like he lacks in that area. He makes things gritty, he makes things kind of ugly in a war, and I feel like that only gets you so far. Gets you a 12-4 record to where you're 50-50 in the UFC. About to be 2-0, maybe looking for a job elsewhere after this fight. I think that's what Ricky Turcios' style and skill set gets you. So, funny kid, like, wish him the best, but I just feel like I just don't see him having much success in this fight. I can see him shooting takedowns and really, putting the pressure on Bernardo Sopaj, but I think that he'll be able to defend the takedowns and just be beating up Turcios on the feet. He was able to reverse a lot of the takedowns that I've seen in his previous fights. The fight before Vinicius Oliveira just got on top of a guy and wouldn't stop hitting him. The guy eventually submitted to strikes, which you don't see very often. So Bernardo Sopaj, I think he'll KO Turcios. He's 24 years old. We've already kind of seen how good he is, and he's only just going to be getting drastically better every time we see him. Somebody like Ricky Turcios, who's 31, I feel like he's kind of plateaued. Like the baby's been born. We're not going to see any huge new wrinkles out of somebody like Ricky Turcios, in my opinion. Whereas Sopaj, I think that each time we see him, as he grows in his career, we're just going to see exponential improvement. So with saying that and seeing how he is now, I can only imagine what he's going to look like in there against somebody of Turcios' caliber. This is just a Turcios bashing video, I'm realizing that, but it is what it is. Sopaj by KO. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks.